Well, let's get the thoughts of Ian Blackford, the Westminster leader of the SNP, on that one. Ian Blackford, do you agree with Nadine Dorries that the Prime Minister is going to carry on?
What an astonishing statement from Nadine Dorries. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised given what she's been saying over the last few days and weeks, Adam. The simple fact of the matter is there is palpable anger right across these aisles at the behaviour of the Prime Minister that put in place rules that everyone had to adhere to in terms of social distancing, in terms of meeting with family members. And people made enormous sacrifices. They couldn't be with their loved ones when they were in hospital, couldn't visit their relatives in care homes, often couldn't attend family funerals. And here we have the Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister ever to be convicted of breaking the law. Where's dignity and self-respect in public life? We shouldn't even be asking for the Prime Minister to resign. He should realise that he and the Chancellor have got to go because they've breached the trust that was put in them by the public of these islands when they went into office in 2019. You cannot have a Prime Minister that is going to be setting down new laws. We've got a Queen's speech in a matter of weeks, and yet he's been convicted of breaking his own laws. And it's the behaviour that Nadine Dorries that refers to. There's this sense of entitlement that senior Tories seem to have, that rules are for little people, they're not for them. Everything that was seen, and this is just the latest example, but you think about the prorogation of Parliament, lying to the Queen, the illegal COVID contracts that we saw over PPE where they were found guilty in a court of law, those that give large amounts of money to the Tory party that end up in the House of Lords. By the very behaviour of this Prime Minister, and now what we see, a Chancellor that had a green card to the US, his wife being a non-dom. The point about all of this is they believe they can get away with it. And it is not too far to say that this is the very threat to our parliamentary democracy because they are above the law.
I mean, you draw a parallel with the attempted prorogation. The fact is, Boris Johnson won a general election pretty handsomely after that. I mean, this matter has dragged on so long. There's so many serious issues out there to do with the economy, the cost of living, Ukraine. Do you think the public is still outraged about this, really?
Oh, no, there's no question, Adam. I mean, I can tell by my own postbag and people that I've seen out and about this afternoon, people are just disgusted with this behaviour. There has to be decency in public life. There has to be standards. And when you break the law, and when we know that it's not just been about one party, it's not about this one party in the 19th of June, it's about that culture of party, that sense of entitlement that I referred to, that they can do as they please, that moral authority has been lost, that right to lead has been lost. And it is important that people have dignity and self-respect. I've written to the Prime Minister today, and I've asked him to recall Parliament. And it's one of the things that concerns me is that the right to recall Parliament is solely in the hands of the Prime Minister. But he should be recalling Parliament this week. We should be meeting on Thursday, and he and the Chancellor should be giving resignation statements. They should be coming to Parliament. He should be going to the Queen to resign as Prime Minister. We can all remember the imagery of the Queen sitting on her own at her husband's funeral, knowing that a party had taken place the night before in Downing Street. The behaviour is unacceptable. It's unforgivable. And that anger that the public have, where they had to make sure that they were adhering to the rules. This is a Prime Minister, those around him, that will not be forgiven for their behaviour.
But you see, the nub of this is that it appears, according to the snap poll from YouGov, that 57% of the electorate would like Boris Johnson to resign, and indeed the Chancellor Rishi Sunak, because they've been fined. But, I mean, that doesn't make any difference. There's nothing the public or you can do about it, is there?
No, Adam, you're right. And that responsibility rests with Tory MPs. They need to have a sense of backbone, and they need to recognise, they will see from the emails that they will get from constituents, that they have that authority to remove this man that's lied to the House of Commons, that's broken the trust of the people of these islands. They have to accept their moral responsibility, because they can put letters into the chair of their 1922 committee. They can have a motion of no confidence, and they can remove this Prime Minister. My question to them, are they up to the task? Do they recognise that they now have to do the right thing? Because they have that authority to remove this man that's sustaining our democracy.
Ian Blackford, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We can speak now to Sir Craig Oliver, who was Director of Communications at 10 Downing Street in the time of Prime Minister David Cameron, who, of course, did take a decision to resign following the defeat in the Brexit referendum. Sir Craig, before we get into the morality of this, I just wonder, as a professional watcher and insider on politics, do you think the Prime Minister is in a tenable or an untenable position?
The question is, will Conservative MPs push him out now? And I do not detect that there is a mood among Conservative MPs to push him out now. Now, you can argue the rights and the wrongs of that and the morality of that, but I do not think that there is a mood in the Conservative Party to do that. Very interestingly, today, Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, who was absolutely unequivocal at the peak of Partygate that Boris Johnson should go, has pulled back quite significantly on that. And I think if he's doing that, it's probable that many other Conservative MPs are as well.
Do you think the argument about there being a war on is humbug?
Look, would it make a huge material difference to what's going on in Ukraine if our Prime Minister went? I don't think it would make a huge material difference. It is certainly clear that Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian people do like Boris Johnson. He's very popular. The amount of lethal aid that's been poured into that country, the visit at the weekend makes it very popular. Do I think it would make a huge material difference? Probably not.
Now, by the standards of prime ministers, or indeed by the standards of Conservative prime ministers, how bad is it that Boris Johnson has been fined, in your view, for breaking lockdown rules which he imposed on the country?
Well, he's the first prime minister to have been found to break the law, and that's a record that you don't want to break. It's not something that is saying that you want on your record. Having said that, I think that there was a moment in this, probably about 6 to 8 weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago, where this was at its peak. There was an enormous amount of pressure on Boris Johnson, and it did feel at that moment that he was teetering, and it was possible that he could have been in a situation where there was a vote of no confidence and he was pushed out. What happens in politics is often the energy and the heat and the steam comes out of a situation. And I think as this has dragged on, again, rightly or wrongly, the energy, the heat, and the steam has come out of this to the point where it will be very noisy. It will be very difficult for him. People like Ian Blackford will make a lot of hay with this. But do I think it's actually going to shake him out of Downing Street? No. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. First of all, he does not want to go. It's very difficult to get rid of a sitting Prime Minister. It's happening in recess. There's not going to be any PMQs this week, and I think next week either. So he has the ability to ride this out much more than if this happened in term time, and certainly much more if there wasn't the war going on in Ukraine and he wasn't receiving the plaudits that he is for that.
What about Rishi Sunak? Some people speculating that he might be the one who's more inclined to resign, particularly given the other difficulties he's had over the past week or so.
Yeah, I've seen that there's quite a lot of speculation around that. Look, who knows? I may be proven wrong in the next 5 or 10 minutes, but I don't think that he is likely to go. Strangely, I think the fact that Rishi Sunak, who's also received a fixed penalty notice, that actually helps Boris Johnson. It's weirdly a case of strength in numbers on this. And also, I think that people saying that he's broken the law. Of course, that is a serious issue for the Prime Minister, and you never want to be in that position. But I think you'll find a lot of people probably briefing on background that a fixed penalty notice is not the same as a crime that results in a suspended or a custodial sentence, and that people need to get some perspective on that.
If Rishi Sunak were to go, would that put the Prime Minister in a more difficult position?
Definitely. I think if Rishi Sunak said that he was going on this matter and that it was a matter of principle that he had been fined and he felt as a politician he had to go, inevitably that would pile an enormous amount of pressure onto the Prime Minister. You never want to be in a situation as a Prime Minister when you lose your Chancellor. It is a fundamentally weakening experience unless you're moving them yourself. And to do that when it is because of a matter of ethics or morality, that makes it even worse. Do I expect that to happen? No, but I may be proven wrong.
Because, I mean, the bizarre thing is that so far in this whole business, the only person who's resigned is your sort of successor in number 10, the spin doctor, the spokesperson for the government.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people look at that and they don't realise that the reality of being an aide in number 10 is you're a bit like a pawn in chess. Your job is there to protect the big pieces on the board. And if it's likely that it's them or you, it's usually you that is going to have to go, I'm afraid. And I think most people who are aides in politics understand that. It may not be fair, it may not be right, but it has been like that for time immemorial, I'm afraid.
Do you think that's really fair to Allegra Stratton? I mean, she seemed to resign because out of contrition, she was ashamed of herself.
Yeah, look, and I think that a lot of people will look at Allegra and say that she's a decent woman who felt that she needed to go and was embarrassed by the clips that were shown and felt that on a point of principle she needed to go. She made that choice. I think that what the point here is the Prime Minister going to be somebody who says, I'm going to give up being Prime Minister of this country on this basis? We can spend all day arguing about whether he should or not. The point is, he is not going to go unless he is forced. And then the next question is, who is going to force him? And I don't think that Conservative MPs are in the mood to do that. They're certainly not in the mood to do that ahead of local elections. They're not in the mood to do it after what's been going on in Ukraine. And they also are not in the mood for it because I don't think they know where it would land. Until recently, Rishi Sunak was seen as one of the front runners. I think he's been pretty much knocked out because of recent events. Who would be the leader of the Conservative Party? And I think Conservative MPs think very hard about that kind of thing. And if they don't know where a leadership contest is going to end up, they would be very reluctant to start one.
So, Craig, I don't know if you're a Conservative. I know you've worked for them. Isn't that a pretty shameful state of affairs?
What, that MPs
are calculating on keeping on the Prime Minister in these circumstances?
Well, that's a good question, Adam, but I think you've been around the political block for several decades now, and you know that people do calculate in politics and they do work out whether or not this is going to accentuate their chances of remaining in office or not. I'm afraid that's politics.
It's Craig Oliver. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Interesting statement just out on Twitter from Carrie Johnson's spokesperson, as reported by Christopher Hope. Mrs. Johnson has paid a FPN, that's a fixed penalty notice, relating to a gathering on the afternoon of the 19th of June 2020. Whilst she believed that she was acting in accordance with the rules at the time, Mrs. Johnson accepts the Met Police's findings and apologises unreservedly. So in other words, she now believes she was wrong, but she didn't at the time. Some of your texts coming in. Would a Prime Minister have to resign if he had broken the motoring speed limit? That's from Kim at Bournemouth. I think the answer to that is no, but he does tend to have an outrider and he's not allowed to drive while he's Prime Minister, so not particularly relevant. And in answer to your question, Adam, no, millions of us do not care in the slightest. We care about important issues affecting the world. Blackford can talk all he likes about the size of his post bag. That doesn't change a thing. That from John. And from Anonymous, can we please see Boris's replacement being sworn in with one hand raised and the other on a book of wallpaper patterns? Pretty please, another. From Anonymous, keep them coming. Number 87. 222 is the way to tweet to us with your message, using the word Times, please, first, or you can email studio@times.radio.